So welcome everyone. I can't believe we are coming up on almost 4 years of this webinar series. Like that is freaky scary how time goes so fast. Welcome if you're new to our webinar series. We have some of the usual suspects on the call with me today. So Arnie Howes is one of our Microsoft 365 consultants. Arnie's specialty is process improvement and the Microsoft Teams SharePoint environment. And then we have our lovely Nancy Kreschke with us as well. Nancy's our trainer and Microsoft 365 expert. So thanks for being here, team. And I'm Jan Lehman. I'm the owner of CTC Productivity. If you haven't joined us, the way we structure these webinars is we hit content at the beginning and then open it up for Q&A. But at any point, feel free to start entering questions into chat. It's totally fine. But we tend to try to get through content. And then if people want to bug out early, they certainly can. The topic today is part two. Oh, Arnie, go back. The topic today is part two. This is so confusing. So today is part two of a series we started, Arnie did in October. So he did part one in October about how to prioritize continuous improvement or to identify continuous improvement opportunities in Microsoft 365. And today he's doing part two, which is how to make the decisions of which of those continuous improvement projects you should prioritize. In between time, we interrupted Arnie's little series because Copilot was supposed to be coming out in November. So we did a webinar on Copilot. For those of you that haven't heard, Copilot actually came out this month, and there was a major significant change. That originally Copilot was supposed to be for larger companies, but Microsoft ended up releasing it to all size companies, which is fabulous, fabulous news. So I'm entering into chat a bunch of links, and one of them is definitely the list of our, like you could go to YouTube and see past recordings and go, but I would highly recommend you go check out the Copilot webinar that we did in November, in addition to Arnie's part one in October, if you missed that. So, wow, that was a mouthful. So today, that's what we're going to be doing. Then next, our next webinar is going to be in March, and Nancy's going to be taking over. And we're going to start skipping and doing every other month. We are very blessed to be super crazy busy. And so we've just decided to do webinars every other month versus every month. So in March, Nancy's going to be bringing us back to OneNote. And this time we're actually going to be talking about it more for personal use versus team use, just trying to help you understand the flexibility of the tool. And I just want to make one comment too. Often people will say, well, Jan, why do you guys use Zoom if you're Microsoft 365 experts? And one of our philosophies is if you have disparate software that does the same thing that Microsoft does, really get rid of it and bring everything all into the 365 environment because of the tight integration. But in addition, Copilot is another reason you want to get all your data in a 365 environment, because you can actually leverage the data within your 365 environment with Copilot. If you have data sitting out on an island on separate pieces of software, it can't leverage that. So, so we actually though have one Zoom link because there are times when it does make sense to have a separate piece of software. And so we don't want there to be any barrier for anybody to attend our webinars. And often people don't have 365 set up properly, or they've never used Teams meetings. And so anyway, that's the backstory on why the heck we use Zoom when we're supposedly Microsoft 365 experts. So, all right, I'm going to hit a couple slides before we turn it over to Arnie. So we don't recommend use software just to use it. We always say, make sure you know what the business issue is. And there's a number of issues that typically we spot where we know that you should be using 365. Go ahead, Arnie. Yep. So typically it's around communication, collaboration, accountability, anything in that space. You should kind of know that you should be really looking at your Microsoft 365 suite of tools. The world is definitely still very mixed in the hybrid and back and remote worlds. Even for businesses, though, that are fully back in the office, you definitely would benefit from getting all of your data into the cloud, into SharePoint, OneDrive, and using all the apps, because you will definitely have that employee that has a sick kid and has to stay at home but didn't plan on it, so they can stay productive even though they didn't plan to work from home. I'm going to do a quick case study, and we realize we've done this now for a few months, so we'll swap it up next time. But this one's about a wealth management company we worked with, and The challenge for the CEO is the typical, they were pulled down working so much in the business versus on the business. They were growing really fast and adding bodies, but balls were basically dropping. And so they really needed a new way of working, which is why they reached out to us. So I did one-on-one coaching with the CEO of the company and focused on increasing personal productivity. And while doing that, very typically what happens is we spot opportunities for everybody in the company to work together more efficiently, and that would reduce the CEO from being pulled down into the business so much. So their issues really were a lot of the internal discussions were getting lost in email. They couldn't access data when they were out in the office because their data was over on a network server. And one of their main issues, they had a lot of transactions, customer activities going on, and they just really didn't have a good handle on it and had to spend a lot of time kind of checking on the status of things. So that was their main issues. Certainly, they wanted to try and leverage their CRM. They used Redtail, and it was an awesome CRM. It was really one of the best CRMs for their industry, and they're still using it, but it was limited, and they couldn't do really good reporting and really see the data the way they needed to. So that was the number one issue. They tried to use some of the workflows within the CRM. Again, it just didn't work and it was overly complicated and they just couldn't pull reports. So again, they just recognized they kind of hit a number of dead ends with trying to use the CRM tool to solve the problem. So we came in and helped him. Arnie was on this one and did a phenomenal job. And so Arnie helped guide them on how to move all internal discussions out of email into the Microsoft Teams environment. We moved data and everything over and set them up in the Teams and SharePoint site. And really then Arnie built out a tool that I always say like supplemented the CRM. So the CRM was great for certain things, but not good for other things. So he built a tool there. And now everything's working peachy, right? Internal conversations are really efficient. They can access everything on any device. And within the Teams environment, they now have this centralized portal where they can access so many different things, including their new tool that Arnie built out. These are just comments from the client that the solution, the SharePoint solution, was a game changer. So a lot of people think SharePoint is just a document repository, but it's not. As I've learned from Arnie and some of our other lovely colleagues, it's actually a place where you can build out robust applications. So that tool that we built for them was a game changer. They can now really quickly see status, and the CEO now had complete confidence in the team that balls wouldn't drop, which was huge. So they now have much more visibility. They can filter data any way they want. They could sort by any key. So SharePoint just provides so much flexibility with being able to massage the data and report on the data any way you need it for any level in the organization. So now basically accuracy is improved. I love the last line item here, happiness and peace of mind makes us super happy. So not only are they more productive, but everybody's enjoying their day-to-day work a lot more, which is key. And overall cost for actually the coaching and the project was just a little over 10,000. And the ROI is each of the three people in the office are saving 10 hours a week, which if you extrapolate that out over a year, that's really saving them 3/4 of a person for a year. So pretty obvious ROI on that one. So nice work, Arnie.
Yeah, that was fun to see such a change with an office of three. So. Well, like Jan said, this is what we're covering today. It may be a shorter webinar, but I think is very valuable. But we don't like to propose using 365 just for the sake of using 365. It's awesome. The features are cool, but no, you do it to improve your business. So the webinar I did in October, I thought it was November, but thanks, Jan, it was in October. Was one of the quotes we often hear. We hear it from almost every client we start working with is, "We don't know what we don't know." Fortunately, they suspected something or they wouldn't have called us. But the October webinar, part one of this series, was the bottom line was you don't have to know 365 to know where your processes are clunky, error prone, take too much time, etc. So go back, look at the October webinar if you want to know where to get started with 365. You don't have to know 365 to start heading that direction. So real quick review. This shouldn't take but about 2 minutes. I'm going to rip through these questions to tell you part of what I covered back then. You just want to ask yourself, where is there frustration in our processes? Where are balls dropping? Where are errors happening? What do employees hate to do? What is the busy work? Oftentimes the things they do on the computer, they're repetitive. They can be streamlined with 365. You don't necessarily need to know how to do it 365. Just where do you look for that stuff? Where do they do duplicate data entry and editing? When do people struggle to get information that they need to do their work, but it's either not available or it's deeply buried? And oftentimes, when is information communicated verbally or by paper and entered into a system? So you don't necessarily have to be having errors in a process, but if it's super important, if it's time consuming, even if that process is working, if you can save 20% of the time it takes or 50%, you should go for it. And while you're at it, you may even improve it even more. So specifically, where can you look? Tracking spreadsheets. I love SharePoint. I've been using SharePoint for right at 20 years. SharePoint is the beast that powers Teams. But tracking spreadsheets, if you watched any webinars, you know I love SharePoint lists. So spreadsheets, look there. Spreadsheets, especially with multiple users or consumers of the information. As I said before, deeply nested files and folders. Jan's latest or blog post before last on her blog, she brought up a great point in survey your in-mail. And I would also say your sent items. Look for repetitive emails and reports and add those things to your list. Chances are Microsoft has an app or a feature in an app that will eliminate and improve those repetitive emails and reports. If you have employees that don't sit at a desk and they need information, they need to interact with data, 365 is your tool because of its friendliness to mobile devices. And I think it only costs anywhere from $2 to $6 per employee to get those people into 365. You don't have to buy the $20 license. Employee onboarding and education. And again, this is big, important processes where information is being stored, used, employees collaborate. Even if it's not failing, you may be able to cut a lot of time out of those processes. So that in a nutshell is the October webinar. Bottom line is you come up with as long a list as you can with all the improvement opportunities, even if you don't know how to apply 365. This is where the business owners, the managers are key because they know what processes could be improved. So you get that long list. The second most common thing clients tell us, and I heard this one at least 3 times last week with new clients, is we're overwhelmed and we don't know where to start. 365 Teams, SharePoint, it is massive. There are a lot of items on every menu. There's a lot of functionality. Where in the heck do we start? So that's what today is about. Let's prioritize that long list of opportunities that you compiled and figure out where do we start on this long list. Because it's tempting to start on the most important, and I'll show why that the most important processes or failures may not be the place that you want to start. So more on that shortly. So I've been using a matrix like this for many years. Probably some of you have used matrices like this before, but you want a 4-column matrix. And in the first column, you want to list all those solutions that you had. In this case, I'm just the fictional company, and I've seen a lot of this working with contractors who work in a local area. They have cranes and things like that, and nobody knows where the equipment's at. They have no good way to reserve it, et cetera. So that's a common issue. I listed that one. EOS, management tracking, entrepreneurial operating system comes out of the traction book. 70,000 companies worldwide use it, last I heard. Regardless whether you use EOS or not, you have strategic things. goals, strategies, issues, etc. In my fictional company, we're struggling with that. We're not doing a good job. We set our goals January and don't notice them again until December, and that's not good. And so you just keep listing all the items on your bullet list. And hopefully your list is a lot longer than this, but I only have so much real estate on the slide. So then in the second column, we start rating those. And in this case, we have a single column for the impact to our business. Whether that's potential savings, errors avoided, etc., how much impact, if we solved each of these processes or these needs or implemented these solutions, how much impact on our business will it have? In this instance, I'm going to say that management tracking our goals and getting some accountability on goals and such, whether you use US or not, I say, that's going to have a huge impact on our company. It's going to improve the strategy and therefore has the biggest impact on this list. So pay very close attention to the order that I apply these numbers. The first step in doing the ratings is what is most important. And we're going to work on a scale of 1 to 10. The next step then is the exact opposite. I ask myself which of the things on my list have the very least impact to the business. In this case, I decided, our templates are getting overwritten. Templates are hidden. Maybe we've got conflicting templates for the same process, but we need to organize those. Microsoft, SharePoint have a great feature that allows you to do that. But in this case, it has a low impact on our business compared to the other things. So then you notice I said, rate these items, don't rank them. So here's a little story. In the 1951 National League pennant race, there were 3 teams who were neck and neck. There's never been a closer race in baseball. And so they were all 3 tied at the end of the season. So they had to have playoffs to figure out, well, who's moving on to the World Series. So they had a special playoff for it. Well, anyway, in the last inning, the last at bat of the last game of the last series of the season, Bobby Thompson hit what was called the shot hit heard around the world. He hit a home run, won the game. But the reason I show this is not that all of you care about baseball, but there were 3 very evenly matched teams. And if you were to rate those teams, how would you rate them? Here's how I would do it. There were 3 equal teams. The others were kind of also rans. I would rate them 3 10s. Those teams were so easily matched. I gave them 3 10s, and all the rest then went in the one, was the last place team, and I placed the others in that list. But it's okay to have 3 10s, a 10 and 2 9s, etc. These are ratings, not rankings. If you rank them, it would be the New York Giants, Bobby Thompson's team would be 1. The Yankees would be 2, or the Dodgers would be 2, etc. That doesn't really do justice to proportionally how important these things are. Now, on the flip side, I'm probably the only one here old enough to remember this, but in 1973, Secretariat won the Kentucky Derby, and this is a photograph from the finish line. And you can hardly see second and third place. Secretariat was the Michael Jordan of horse racing of all time. So huge distance. So how would I rate those horses? Well, there was Secretariat, and then there were all the others. Nobody remembers them. They got smoked. Probably nobody could name the names of those horses. But if I had to rank those, it would be like this: 10, and the rest would be 1s, 2s, and 3s. I probably beat this dead horse into the ground, but you don't want to rank them, you want to rate them. So with that said, let's get back to our matrix.
Thanks for our history lesson, Arnie. That was fun.
Hey, everybody's tired of seeing graphs and business stuff. So
That was great.
let's talk sports. So anyway, I have my 10 and 1, and all of the other processes I want to measure on that range against my high and my low. Where does it fall in there? In this case, task tracking solution, we're having a hard time keeping people accountable for getting their to-dos done. I happen to know that Planner is available. It's easy to implement, fairly intuitive. Um, that'll make a big difference, but the impact to our business is an 8. And so you get the idea. I rate all the others on that scale. So now we know what's most important, but don't start building yet because there's more to it. That's why there's another column. So now we know the EOS management tracking strategy goals, that kind of stuff. That's super important. But I happen to know that might also take a lot longer to implement or to build. So I want to consider then the simplicity of all the solutions. Momentum's an important thing in continuous improvement. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of, well, back when I was in the corporate world, a VP, a senior VP would say, this important project, Arnie, go fix this. And I would disappear. And thanks to having to work with committees and everything, but plus the complexity of the solution, it might take months to get that done. You lose momentum. Perhaps you get a new VP. Then you don't improve anything for 6 months, 8 months. So we want to try to weight things to where we can get easy, quick wins while still considering the potential impact to the business. So when we're considering simplicity of the solution, we want to promote items that are easy, and punish those that are more complex in our ratings. So first of all, we want to look for those things that are complex to build, and we want to kind of ding them with low scores. Things that have a long lead time, maybe they're not so hard, but they take a long time. So you want to give those a low score. Complex change management. There's a lot of communications. It's not going to be the easy, the build may be easy, but the change management may be difficult or time consuming. So
that's a really good point, Arnie.
Yes, oftentimes the build is the easy part. It's the change management. And yeah, Jan and I, Nancy, we understand it. It's easy to build whatever, but sometimes making sure you don't mess up the business process, because that's what makes businesses money or keeps them running. You don't want to mess them up. So the communications and all take some time.
Yep.
So if something affects many people or departments, doesn't matter how simple it is, that's kind of like change management, but regardless, it's more complex. You want to consider the potential of disrupting business processes. And then to score that, we're going to do kind of the same thing. Scale of 1 to 10. 10 is simple. It's kind of the reverse of what you would think, but 10 is simple and 1 is complex. To reward things in this system, because high score is good, 10 is simple, 1 is complex. So the first thing I'm going to do is, once again, I'm going to say what on this list would be the simplest to build and implement. And in this case, I'm going to go back to that bottom one. Planner's pretty easy. It's not going to take too long to do. So there's my 10 on my standard. And so the next step is, well, what on here is the most complex, the least simple? And I'm going to give that a 1. In this case, I chose the timekeeping process. I know Microsoft has this cool app called Shifts that is an awesome group work scheduling tool, has clock in, clock out, GPS location. It's a really neat tool that more people could probably leverage, but it affects people's paychecks. It affects every hourly employee in the company. We're going to ding that one. It's a 1 in simplicity. And so then, like we did before, I rate all the others against that high score and that low score, and where do they fall proportionally. So, and here's the thing. Some people say, we don't know what we don't know. We don't know where to start, all that stuff. Yes, this prioritization requires a certain level of familiarity with 365. In this simplicity column, you should know the processes. So, that's where when I'm working with the client provides that. They tell me how difficult this is going to be to implement or to do the change management, how important is the process. But I have to provide expertise because I know what the solution might be and how quickly can I build it, etc. You may not have that person yet. If you do, awesome. If you don't, please try to develop one. But Jan and I, we decided, we're going to offer that an hour of that for free. If anybody needs to just get 365 off the ground, we'll help you out. We'll help you with the brainstorming and rating the solutions. But at least when we're done with that hour, you ought to have a pretty good idea of what's most important and where should we start. So that takes care of the two things people call us about, which is we don't know what we don't know, and we're overwhelmed. We don't know where to start. So,
Arnie, this is so funny. I literally just had this whole exercise this morning with the client. So he called, he's like, I know we should be using these tools, but I don't know what they do. And went through this exercise. I'm like, what are your issues? And, all that. And then, and then explained sort of how Power Automate works and maybe when you need programming to do it or when you can do it yourself. And then having that, then it was pretty easy to identify where you should start. So this is so timely. Thank you.
right. And it's just something we run into with every client that comes along. And also the people who don't call us back in the corporate world, use cases I've seen. If you follow the old model that we had way back in the 90s with Word, Excel, Outlook, and PowerPoint, and I'm a fan of training. Nancy does an awesome job training if you need a trainer, but if you just throw it out there, put it on people's computers, and the only thing you do is train people, you're going to be disappointed. In addition to training, you've got to anchor these things with your processes. So there you go. I got off on a tangent. Sorry about that. So anyway, the next step in this prioritization is you multiply those columns crossways. And so you can see I did that. So let's study those numbers for just a moment. The highest score is the 80 at the bottom. So I want to quickly put a 1 on there and say, okay, as it appears now, that's going to be the first solution that we tackle. In second place is that specialized equipment tracking. It is a nice balance of impact and simplicity. Let's make that number 2. Now, some people, I used to work with a lot of engineers and they're thinking people, and they would say, Art, this silly matrix, I know what we should be working on. And perhaps they were a manager and they're really wanting that strategic management tracking type thing done. Well, I do need to consider that. Management made it a 10, or the process owner said, this is top notch. So I'm going to look at that. And I realize as a 365 person that, yeah, it's mediocre on simplicity. It's going to take a while to implement, but we got to get the leadership team on board. Let's make that a 3, because I know in our bandwidth, we can be working on that, getting it started while we're building the 1 and 2. Now, remember, momentum is important when it comes to continuous improvement. So we're going to knock out the 1 and the 2 as quicker wins that have high impact, but we're going to satisfy management in starting on the EOS solution too. But we're not done yet, and this is the last step. We still want to do a reality check. And so I'm going to scan it line by line and say, did something get shortchanged or exaggerated? Doesn't happen often, but sometimes it does. And here's something I like to look for. I made a number 4, and you see the impact is a 1, but I happen to know, since I work at this fictional company, that this will make a lot of my fictional office people happy because they're sick and tired of the template chase. So I know for a fact that will take almost no work and can be quickly implemented. So since it ranked high in simplicity, even though the total score is low, I will get a lot of people bought into this 365 stuff by doing a popular choice, so long as it doesn't take too long to do. So that's kind of a PR move there. So do your reality check when you get done. Those total numbers are very helpful, but don't let them tell you exactly what you must do. We're not machines. We need to give it some thought. So then let's say you're moving along, you work on these 4 things, and you get them done or you get them near done. We're not done. There's a reason they call it continuous improvement. It just repeats over and over and over. So we got those 4 things done. We're going to wipe them off our matrix. We're going to delete the numbers. We're going to add our new ideas that we came up with since then. And what you'll find is as things get improved with 365, people start coming up with more ideas. So you want to keep a running list. So now we revisit all of the old items that didn't make the cut, add the new items, and start scoring again. There, Jan.
Awesome.
I ran 1 minute over. Sorry
That
about
was great, Arnie. And for those of you that don't know, we do develop and roll out an EOS solution in SharePoint. And so let us know if you have a need for that particular item on your to-do list. So nice work, Arnie. I'll go ahead and wrap up. This is definitely a very different webinar for us. It wasn't a techie one, but if anybody has questions about what Arnie's presented or anything about 365, we're going to open the floor in a minute here. So just going to wrap up. A lot of people stumble upon our webinars in YouTube and they're like, who is CTC? What's this company do? Sounds like they kind of know their stuff. So this is how we work. We've developed a roadmap for how companies can fully adopt the technology. Depending on where the company is in the maturity of using Microsoft 365, they might start at a different point. We have a lot of companies that have set it up, it's over there, it's working well, but they want to take full advantage of it. And so we might jump directly into the optimize phase. We have others where the data maybe was moved over incorrectly or hasn't been moved over the network drive. And so we're starting way back at the assess phase, making sure we get that foundation set up properly and build off of that. Our business model is to not have you to be dependent on us. So we definitely want to ultimately wrap up. We're all big believers in training the IT group, the power users, the end users to understand and to be able to maintain everything. So you're not dependent on us. So very much how we work. I think our secret sauce is in this particular place. Training has been a really interesting discussion over the last couple of years. We all learn differently, plain and simple. And so we offer a lot of different options. The group training is always going to be the most economical, easiest way to do it. There's a lot of people that aren't going to learn in a group training session. And so we'll often offer to do more hands-on training, smaller sessions or one-on-one sessions where people can ask questions that they might be embarrassed to ask in the group. And I do believe, thanks to Nancy's guidance, our training expert, that we've really come up with a great strategy to help with adoption at all levels of the organization. Creating what we call your rules of engagement is really critical. Many companies will reach out to us and say, Jan, can you train everybody in the company how to use 365? And we're like, well, that doesn't really make sense. It's not really the order. You should figure out how you're going to configure 365, how you're going to use it, and then train people to actually use the software in a way that matches their workflow and they understand how the tools are going to solve their issues. And again, that adoption is going to be higher because they can connect the dots between what I do every day and how I use this piece of software. And that's just the process we continually go through to help with adoption throughout the life cycle of the project. So next webinar, and I will enter all the links into chat again. So next webinar is going to be in March, and Nancy's up to talk about OneNote again. So in the chat, I just entered the links. There's a couple different links. You've got a link to sign up for that particular. Actually, it's not in there. That's interesting. Oh, yeah, there's March webinars right there. Then you've got the past recordings. So again, the last one was Copilot. So go check that one out. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, it's an easy way just to see our videos. You can sign up for our newsletter, and then you'll find out what the next webinar is that's coming up. You'll get reminders about webinars. And then we have a whole list of case studies. We went through one today, but there's many different case studies that talk about a lot of the different business issues our clients are having and the various apps that you can use or technology to solve it. And then there's a link if you want to buy my book. So awesome. So I think we're at Q&A point. So again, very different kind of webinar. That was great, Arnie. Good way for people to think through making decisions and this continuous improvement model. So are there any questions? Anybody that's on the line, if you have questions about today or anything with Microsoft 365, you're welcome to unmute or enter it into chat. Oh, thanks, Joe. I'm glad you liked the book. That's awesome. Any questions? Or if you have topics you would like us to do for the webinars, we'd love to hear those too. Feel free to enter that into chat or unmute. We're always looking for ideas on what you all want to hear about. So Arnie, that was great. I really enjoyed that series and it really was interesting today. I just went through that exact exercise with a client, and it has to start that way with the business issues, but then when we get the opportunity to explain like what Power Automate can do and what SharePoint can do, then you see their minds open to even like maybe things they didn't know were issues, but now they know that there's a chance to make them better. So they now go on the list because they're like, I would never have thought we could have improved that. I wouldn't have put it on the list. So kind of having a little understanding of how you use the tools is really helpful. So, all right, well, I don't think we have any questions coming in, which is totally fine. So thanks, Nance and Arnie, for being on the call. Arnie, this was great. And thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.